You know, Diego Simeone has a track record for being quite a volatile, hot-headed manager. If anything, he's a man that needs a cold shower. This is today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is indeed the Arsenal News Show, joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me and making this a part of your morning routine. So I hope you're doing good. I hope you're doing well. I hope you've had a fantastic start to your week already. And welcome to match day. Arsenal face Atletico Madrid in the Champions League phase at the Emirates Stadium. 8 o'clock kickoff this evening. I will be there to watch the game and to report for Football.London, of course, and look forward to getting a lot of your thoughts around the game today and, of course, in reaction to that in tomorrow morning's show as well. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. We've got Adegoke, we've got Black Shine, we've got Glenn and Mike and Claire. Good morning to you all. To Matt G, Steve Stone, Grantley Poos, to Jamil, to Martin, to Knowledge, to Olawale. Good morning to Paul and Claire. We've got Scouts Gooner TV. We've got Steve Wells. We've got Rob. We've got Maximius. We've got Paul. We've got plenty more of you guys and girls in the chat box as well. Thank you so much, as always, for doing so. Congratulations to Spearmint for getting himself a timeout. And to the rest of you, let that be a warning for future comments. Let's jump into today's slides. And we begin with one of the most bizarre stories, I think you can agree, to come out the night before a game involving our beloved club. So, yes, there was no hot water at the Emirates Stadium. I'm told that it was a plumbing issue. As to the reason behind the issues that was going on. And I should tell you that it wasn't just the Atletico Madrid dressing room that was affected by this problem, and that the issue was indeed affecting both dressing rooms at the time. And of course, they were made aware of the issue in good time to have it fixed before Atletico Madrid's training session was supposed to come to an end. However, because Atletico Madrid's training session finished slightly early, the problem had not yet been fixed. And so they went back to their hotels for a warm, hot shower. And Arsenal, in due course, obviously apologized for the issue, but it wasn't anything other than just a plumbing issue. I mean, I love the stories. I love the kind of the conspiracy theorists amongst our fan base, and I'm sure amongst Atletico's fan base as well, and suggestions that it was anything more than just a coincidence and a plumbing issue. I'm afraid to pee in your cornflakes this morning and to douse the flames on any giggling showers, shall we say. But sadly, it was indeed just a plumbing issue. So, and had they have finished their training session on time, they would have got themselves a hot shower, but they finished their training session early and the problem had not yet been fixed by that point, ironically so. So, yes, they had to, the poor souls that they are, go back to their very expensive hotel and have a hot shower there instead. But yes, Diego Simeone and his players already have motivation, if you like, to beat Arsenal this evening after their experiences at the Emirates yesterday in the training session. Just before this game, of course, Piero Hincapie is said to be ready now to face Arsenal. Mikel Arteta, of course, in his press conference yesterday, and of course the training session, which was, I'll be honest, I was out there for about 10 minutes and the rain was so horrendous that me and several others thought, we're going to go inside. It was genuinely awful weather yesterday. The weather was, and I didn't have an umbrella. I was kind of wearing a semi kind of waterproof coat, a coat I thought was waterproof. And when I got inside, my shirt had like 2 giant wet patches on the front. So I was clearly not wearing a fully waterproof coat, which was just annoying. And yeah, I had fairly light coloured jeans on, which were no longer lightly coloured jeans. They were very dark from how much water they had absorbed during the training session. So we went inside and waited patiently for updates, of which we didn't expect there to be kind of any surprises in the training session anyway. And as a result of that, everybody was indeed fit, that we expect to be fit, including Piero Hincapie, of course, who did... was confirmed by Mikel Arteta to indeed be ready, available for the game. He said, yeah, he'll be available. And I think that's a game that came a bit too early for him, the Fulham match. So he had another 2 very good sessions, and now he is ready to go, which is, of course, good news for Piero Hincapie and Arsenal. But yes, Mikel Arteta faced the press yesterday, took questions from us in the Shower Royalty Training Centre to get some thoughts on the reality of the game. Alex Howe from BBC kicking things off. Asked about a couple of days since the game against Fulham, just how pleased were you with the victory and the mentality that you showed to get over the line? He said, well, very happy, obviously, and very, especially after an international breaks when you don't have, or rather, you know that you have to, again, align and regroup everybody. You could tell that in the first 10 minutes that we were still getting that rhythm, but afterwards, I think watching the game back that we deserved to win the game. But a lot of the talk, as you could expect, was focused on the game tonight and on Diego Simeone, who took a lot of the attention from the press conference. And he was asked by Alex how highly does he rate Simeone, to which he said, well, at the highest level, I mean, I think what he's done since he got to Atletico has been outstanding. Not only what he has achieved, but the way he's done it. I think the identity that he has created to the club, to the team, to the spirit, I think they are very simple and clear to identify. And that's because the manager is very much them. And that's extremely difficult to achieve for a short period of time. To do it for 14 years, I think he's been there now. It's something incredible. So, yeah, how it will be a pleasure to meet him, which is very true. And also, you probably saw this, and I'm so glad that Alex asked this question. There was a picture going around of William Saliba on the team coach coming back from Fulham, watching Atletico Madrid's game against Osasuna. And he was asked, how did that picture come about, and are you pleased that your players are already turning their attentions to the next fixture? And he said, very pleased, because I didn't encourage it. So it came from them. And that's the most powerful thing, that a game finishes, the job is done, and we've done it. But now, okay, what's next? And what's the next challenge? And what's the next opportunity? And we know that it's going to be a really tough one. So the earlier we start to think about it and prepare, the better. So I love that initiative from the players, and it tells you how much they want it and how focused they are on what is next. So yeah, I think it was great to see that. I think it was a lovely little kind of leak, if you like. I don't remember where it came out from, but it certainly was a nice little story that came out. Dharmesh Sheth from Sky Sports then took over, to which he asked about, again, Diego Simeone approaching 14 years. He said, you're approaching 6 years at Arsenal. Do you look at Simeone as maybe an inspiration and maybe something that you would like to do also at this club? And he says, well, obviously there is someone that I look up to and learn from him in many situations. And what is for me outstanding is his passion. I think for how long he's been in the game and in the same club with the same players, how you still have that that capacity to transmit such an energy and willingness to win. It's a very tough environment that we live in. And to keep convincing players, you have to be extraordinary as well. I don't know him personally, but everything I heard about him is that he's so good at doing that. And that's one of the reasons why you are able to sustain at that level. On being linked to the Premier League, of course, Simeone, Arteta said it's going to get tougher if he was to join. We have enough and super good managers here, so I don't know. That'll be completely up to him if one day he wants to experience that. What can I say is that from what I've seen and from after analysing the team, how well they are coached. I'm scrolling down a little while to one of the questions that I think is, again, quite an interesting one. I think that when it comes to the idea that Arsenal are now favourites, I think that from that perspective, at least, you're looking here at a team that already so early in the season have had kind of their fortunes assessed by everyone based upon what City or Liverpool haven't done or have done. But he says he was asked about whether he embraces this idea that you're favourites. And he said, the only thing that I embrace is when I see the team, the energy, the temperature, the commitment, and the quality that they can deliver, that it gives me that conviction that we can go all the way. But that's it. That's just a feeling. And the next day you have to prove it. The next training session, you have to prove it and nothing else. And we cannot be busy thinking about those topics. Now, Arsenal are the favourites currently for both the Champions League and the Premier League. They're currently set as evens by most bookies as opposed to Liverpool, who were 3-1. In fact, let me do a quick check on odds to win the Premier League, because that 3-1 for Liverpool was actually before the game against Manchester United. Just doing a quick check on the odds. Arsenal are now better than evens across most bookies to win the Premier League. Manchester City are just over 3-1. Liverpool in most cases have dropped as low as 4-1 now to win the Premier League. Not a bad bet, probably not for people that are interested, because I still think that Liverpool, for me, are still my favourites to win it, because I just think if they can click, you never know what might happen. Moving on a little bit, and the next kind of key element that I wanted to ask based upon that Liverpool game was that, of course, they lost. And they lost to Manchester United. And I was surprised that there wasn't any other questions about this. I guess that's because we've kind of come to expect in some ways, if you like, what Arteta will say regarding his rivals. And so I tried to angle this question in a different way, to kind of create a little bit. I said one of the main title rivals that you have this weekend, of course, failed to win, Liverpool against Man United. I said, do you ever notice on the training field after one of your main rivals has failed to win that your players perhaps have a bit of a more of a spring in their step during that first training session back? And he said, I haven't noticed that, but obviously there is a lot of narrative afterwards, but that's it. Every game in this league is a must win and a very difficult game to win. And we're all very appreciative of that, so you don't get carried away with it. Now, my question about Diego Simeone, because I was always going to ask a question about Diego Simeone because it was the big theme of the press conference. And I said, when you come up against a manager who has been in place for such a long period of time as Diego has, does that in any way make your preparation for what you might expect easier because there's so much data and evidence? Or actually, does that make it harder to prepare because there is so much available to you that you might not be able to take it all into account? And he says, well, on this one, I think the hardest thing is that the time that you have basically is just a day when you can't really do much to prepare that. Obviously, understanding and the time that we have to spend to analyze and understand that they have evolved as well from the team that they were probably a year ago, and now how they can change as well in relation to the context of the match, which is something very specific for this team. And in order to prepare the best way, you want to give them everything, but how you're able to simplify the information and make it as concrete as possible for being in the best position to implement what we want to do tomorrow. And I think that's completely fair. You know, this idea that you can prepare Arsenal's players for a game against Atletico when you've had a day of recovery on Sunday and then, of course, a day of training and prep on Monday, it's very difficult. Now, I imagine, of course, that there maybe was some elements of preparation before the Fulham game and that there was maybe some double preparation going on, knowing how little time there was. I don't know that for a fact, but it would be sensible, you would think, of course, to do a little bit around the Atletico game before Fulham as well, because there is so little time between those two matches. But he is right. It is so difficult, of course, I think, to look at that and assess a team with just 1 day's full of ability to change, you know, to change something about that. So yes, certainly from that perspective, I thought it was a fair answer. But getting a little bit further down the press conference as well, he was asked questions about Gabriel Heinze, who as well has been a key figure in that dressing room for Arsenal this season. And he was asked kind of like him being very animated, what's he brought to defence and what is he like as a coach? And he says, I think that's something very, very collective with all the coaches, with the players, with their commitments as well. And Gabby adding something different, that willingness to win, I think. And we've seen that obviously through his career, the experience to win and to elevate somebody's level and to achieve the ambition and drive to the highest limit. He's extraordinary at that. And then Nissan Khan from the Mail also followed up on that as well, around kind of how he is in one-on-one situations and what does he bring in that sense to those scenarios? And he says that experience. I mean, if somebody tells you if you do that, you're going to be successful and you know that they've done that and he's been successful at it, there's obviously a lot of credibility there, which I thought was also a nice tangent to things. But yes, you can read the full transcript of Mikel Arteta's press conference, of course, on the Football.London website. I encourage you to do so. And there was some really interesting stuff about the game indeed to go back to check out. We're going to go to a quick part 2 now, where we're going to go through a little preview of today's show and today's game right after this. Now, I was sent this image by somebody earlier today, which I thought was absolutely excellent, as kind of, what is the best image to describe Arsenal versus Atletico Madrid? And it's probably Metapod versus Metapod. which I just thought was a hilarious meme to describe what this game tonight could face. Now, I think, oh, goodness me, Mike, come on. Kakuna versus Kakuna? What have you... That's some bad knowledge there, Mike. Goodness gracious me. Goodness gracious me. Come on, Mike. What is that? That's a Metapod, my friend. That's no Kakuna. Yeah, I think this is just the best way to describe Arsenal versus Atletico. If you know, you know. All right, I'm not going to explain the meme to you. It's just one of those things. If you know, you know. Because I think it's just such a perfect representation of what. And to be fair, I think both teams are not like the Atletico of old, to be honest. But I think certainly there is the capacity for this game to be one where maybe each other cancels one another out. It's very great. Right, let's jump into what my team would be for today's game against Atleti. I would make a couple of changes. Obviously, we've only played a couple of days ago, and we've got a really big game against Crystal Palace, of course, this weekend as well. So I think a couple of changes could be made. In fact, I've made 3 from the team that beat Fulham. David Raya, of course, remaining in goal. Jurian, Timber, Saliba and Gabriel, my back 3 with Miles Lewis-Skelly making up the 4th on that left-hand side. Zubimendi and Mikel Merino in kind of the midfield pivot, and Eberechi Eze as the 10, meaning that Declan Rice gets a bit of a rest. He was an absolute engine running on Saturday, so he gets a little bit of a rest, who can come off the bench maybe later on in the game if we need him. Bukayo Saka on the right, Martinelli over Trossard on the left, and then, of course, Victor Gyökeres through the middle. We're going to go to your predictions and scorelines about what you think tonight's game is going to be, of course. So start getting those thrown into the chat box. I really would lean towards this being more of a kind of a tightly contested affair. I know Atletico Madrid absolutely blew away Frankfurt 5-1 in their game, but they only beat Osasuna 1-0 at the weekend. They are pretty much fully fit. I think only Cardoso is the only player unavailable for Atletico Madrid during the course of this midweek action. I'll just do a double check on that for you, but I'm pretty sure that is the case. Antoine Griezmann and Julian Alvarez, of course, will be starting, we imagine, up top for Atletico. And their most recent game against Osasuna saw the likes of Alex Baena and Marcos Llorente and Gonzalez as kind of attacking options, wing backs, and the central figure with Barrios and Koke playing the deeper roles. They play typically with the back 3 of Hanko and Lenormand and Jose Maria Jimenez as well. I love on the Transfermarkt website that Lenormand is translated to the Normandy, which I do find a little amusing that the Transfermarkt website has an automatic translation of his name. But he's got a lot of other options, of course, on the bench as well, who could still use in this game. He's got the likes of Giuliano Simeone, of course, who you should be very aware of in the relation. Giacomo Raspadori, and Alexander Sorloth and Conor Gallagher as well. Very key figures that could still feature in the starting 11 also. So plenty of options for Atletico. And Harry says, why would you change what's working? Because you need to learn to rotate, Harry. Simple as that, really. You need to learn to rotate to be able to extend your competitivity throughout the course of a season. George going for a 2-0 win. Steve's going for a 2-1. Claire says 1-0. Rice to score from a direct free kick. He tends to do that against Madrid-based clubs, does he not? Wilson, 1-0 to Arsenal, and Arsenal also to beat Crystal Palace 2-1. Mohammed says 2-1 to the Arsenal. Lucas says 2-0. AA is going for a 3-0 win. Nikkei is going for a 3-1 win. Black Shine going for a 3-2. Red Star 3-0. Bazza 3-1. And Knowledge going for a 2-0. Abdul Hakim says 2-0. Gyökeres brace. Carl says 3-1. Gyökeres brace with Saka as well. Matthew says 1-0 to the Arsenal. Jean says 3-2. Mike's going for a 4-1 win. And Loga says 3-0. We're going to go to part 3. Your questions and more right after this. Abby's going for a 3-1 result to the Arsenal. You love to see it. You love to see it. Right, let's jump into the chat book, shall we, and tackle some of your questions today in what is, of course, the build-up to today's game against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. Atletico Madrid is who Arsenal are playing this evening. How things come full circle, hey? We've been saying for years about how you pronounce the name, and now Arsenal come face to face against them. It's It was meant to be this game. George says, in the game against Madrid that they won recently, Simeone started on the right in a 4-4, that being Giuliano Simeone, not Diego. That would be a hell of a turn up for the books, wouldn't it? And it looked more like a 4-4. Sorry, it looked more like a 5-3-2 with Simeone dropping into the right wing-back role. They condensed the midfield, forced the ball wide, and then pressed. It's a really good analysis there from George. And I think that Arsenal are going to have to be aware, of course, coming up against the back three. They haven't really come up against too many back threes this season. Newcastle switched to a back three when they were leading against Arsenal, and it obviously didn't do them all the world of goods on Tyneside earlier in the season. But it will be one of the rare examples of a back three that Arsenal have to come up against this evening. And I think they'll probably look to cope with that pretty well, you would assume. I think that Arsenal would welcome, coming up against the likes of a back three. So that's something to think about. So looking forward to that indeed. Cal says, did you see Gary O'Neill talk about Mikel last night? And it's always amazing to see the respect and admiration he gets from coaches as opposed to pundits online. I didn't actually. Let me have a quick see if I can find the quote. Was he on Monday Night Football? I imagine he probably was. Gary Neville says he has built almost a complete machine. This Arsenal team can do everything. Was kind of his description of. In short, I imagine there's probably a video that links to it, but it's not surprising to see kind words, from a manager like Gary Neville. I've got a lot of respect for. I know things didn't go too well for him at Wolves. It's not like Wolves have improved considerably since he's left. I always thought he was one of the managers to keep an eye on, and I'm surprised that maybe Nottingham Forest didn't perhaps look to him over somebody like Sean Dyche to get perhaps some more from them, because I think he is a good coach. Scrolling down a little bit more, Spearmint lying again in the chat. You know what you did. Lucas says, Tom, was there much said in the embargo bit of the press conference? It's already out. The embargo section is out already. You can go and check it out if you like. There also Mikel Marino was speaking to us as well. I asked him, I don't have you the exact quotes, I don't think. Let me see if I can find kind of a rough version. I did get sent, I think, a rough version. Let me see if I can find, because someone did send me kind of an AI transcript of it that hadn't been cleaned up. Oh, yes. I said, this season you're playing again with your friend Martin Zubimendi. What has it been like when playing under another team, under another coach, and then play together with another team? What's that experience like playing in two different environments? And he says, it's good, to be honest. I've been playing with him under 3 different coaches now, the national team, Sociedad, and here. Obviously, the relationship is the same, but there are little tricks that you have to adapt in terms of what the manager demands of you. It's fun how you can adapt as a couple, as a partnership, to have different relationships that you've had in the past. And it's always fun to play alongside players of that caliber. And I'm really happy that he's here with the team. The other question that I asked, I said that your numbers for Spain have gone up quite a lot recently. I think it's 6 in your last 4 matches. Does that in some ways come from your move to Arsenal? Have your improvements come to the national team in part by how you've been coached here as well? And he says in part, for sure. I think the way that we train here, the way we prepare every game and every training session makes you adapt to every situation on the pitch. Maybe in a different moment in my career, I wasn't used to being so much in the box. Obviously, that time last year where I had to play as a striker, I think that helped me a lot in terms of identifying where to position myself in the box, what are the weaknesses of the centre-backs, and what they like to do and what they do not like to do. Every training session, every game is a chance to learn, a chance to improve. So, yeah, I think that, and he carries on, actually, sorry, he says, I think I've used all those moments to become a threat now in the box, and I'm happy to be scoring, and hopefully I can keep doing it. So yeah, he was very good on that topic of kind of Martin Zubimendi, and also about how he's kind of taken his level to a new level. Just having a quick scroll down the embargo section, there was only a little bit. John Cross from the Mirror asked about how difficult it is when you're on the touchline not to react to fans. It must be a test, because obviously Arteta and Simeone have a very similar style on the touchline. I think we can all agree they're both very animated. And they're both very much they're both very much, they leave nothing at the door, shall we say. That's probably the best way to describe it. He says it is difficult as well, because you are defending your club, your players, and you want, that the small details can define at the end whether you win a match or not. We are there living it with high emotions, and it is difficult to control. we get really emotional and we start to run with our players and celebrating goals. It is something natural and it has to be understood in a respectful way. From my experience over the years, I try to be a little bit calm, but there are moments when it's not easy. He was asked if you have tried to calm down, and he says, if you react in a way which is not good, we have a responsibility to be an example. I have done it. I have made mistakes, but I try and learn to not do them again. I honestly think that there's so much made of how managers act on the touchline as something other than it's just entertaining and fun. I think they should be given more license. I think the whole idea of a technical area is a load of rubbish. I think as long as they don't cross the line into the field, I don't see why that a technical area should even exist. If they want to run down the touchline like Enzo Maresca did when Chelsea won the game, and as a result he receives a one-match ban, I mean, how sad is that? How sad is that these days receives a one-match ban and a fine if you run down the touchline and celebrate with your teammates? It's rubbish. Absolutely rubbish. Says, why is it called the embargo section? So during a press conference, you have different sections. It used to be split up into 3 sections. You have the live section and then 2 embargo sections. These days, there is only 1 embargo section. And the reason why there are embargo sections is because of print, because of papers, because of newspapers. So, for instance, everything that goes out in the live broadcast section is out there in the world. The internet is digital. Whereas back in the day, press conferences would be just limited to newspapers. You'd only be able to read the comments of Arteta and others before the internet arrived in the newspaper. And so to protect newspapers, we now have an embargo section. And an embargo means that you are not allowed to say, publish, reveal anything from the embargo section until the designated time. Now, the designated time for yesterday's embargo was 10:30 p.m. last night, so that the quotes would be used in the morning papers. So any quotes that we discussed there in the embargo section, that goes out in the morning paper. It's the same for a mix zone. If I'm in a mix zone and I'm chatting to one of the Arsenal players after a game, after we've spoken to them as a group of journalists, we'll talk afterwards and say, let's hold these quotes for this time so they can be used in the paper. And then obviously we'll use them online at that time as well if it needs to be the case. So yes, that's kind of how it works. That's what an embargo section is in the press conference and why that exists as well. Roy says, Tom, is Simeone banned from the touchline after the Liverpool game? They've played a game since then, so I don't think so. Ollie says, did you see the Cess quotes crediting Wenger with how he's developed his coaching philosophy and how he'd love to coach Arsenal in the future? I haven't seen them, but that's not surprising at all. Mark says, was there any discussion about yet another VAR intervention to overturn a penalty kick that was not clearly and obviously wrong? In fact, it was clearly right as awarded. I didn't watch it, so I don't know if there has been any more discussion. I don't know if they're going to do another mic'd up episode either, but certainly I think there needs to be the release of that audio without a doubt. Carl says, Mikel Marino said that Arteta is one of the best coaches, if not the best in the world. What's your take? And I, for one, believe that's absolutely right. What's your take? I don't know if it's absolutely right, and I think he's definitely biased, Mikel, but Arteta's definitely up there among the top 10 coaches in the world. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. People will say, oh, he hasn't won anything other than the FA Cup back in 2020. And for me, you know, trophies are a result of absolutely the quality of the manager, but it's also a result of the quality of the team. It's also a result of luck to a lot of examples as well. I think Arteta has definitely put himself up amongst the top 10 coaches in the world. And without a doubt, if he was to leave Arsenal, would have no shortage of elite clubs coming to try and convince him to take over their respective teams as well. Soup says, do you think Mikel Arteta signed Mikel Marino partly because of the qualities that he admired in the player that he usually plays with, like Tim Cahill, Marouane Fellaini and Aaron Ramsey? I think that obviously Arteta will look for a player's abilities based upon more so what Arsenal needs. He'll have experiences of playing with other players, of course, and perhaps he'll see qualities in those players based upon the player that he wants to sign. But it is more so about the idea that you look at a profile and you look at what your team needs and you think, does that profile or is that profile needed? And I think a profile like Marino has been absolutely justified to have been needed at Arsenal. He's a very underrated part, I think, of this Arsenal squad. And I'm very pleased that he is absolutely a part of this team. Adney says, should we choose a lineup featuring Marinos of Mendy and Rice because of their strong physical attributes? I believe Eze would be overpowered by the physical midfield of Atletico. I mean, their midfield is Coque and Barrios, who are good, but then Alex Bainer, who is a pretty lightweight player in his creation. I think that Eze would be fine. And he needs to kind of, I think, experience these types of games as well. I think he'll play either in them left wing position maybe in this game, or he'll play in the middle. But I'd be surprised if he wasn't playing. And Jacob says, Tom, can you please send a public message out about Stuart Pearce and his family? He's tragically lost his son in the last week in a tractor accident at the age of just 21. Ever so sad, and thoughts of being with the family. Jacob, I think you summed that up as perfectly as I feasibly could. And indeed, thoughts are very much with Stuart Pearce and his family during what I'm imagining. I can't imagine what that must be like. It must be absolutely horrendous. So indeed, definitely 100% thoughts are with Stuart Pearce and his family during a very, 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 very difficult time. And every interaction I've had with Stuart Pearce, if I've ever been asked to go on 5 Live, has always been a joyous interview and occasion to speak with him. So certainly, Jacob, thank you for raising that in today's episode. I do want to bring your attention as well to just a quick link. If you are based in the London area, there is an event on this Friday with the Kevin Campbell Foundation, of course, a group that is very close to my heart for what should be very obvious reasons. Kevin was a good friend of mine, and we were absolutely gutted to lose him. But in the wake of his passing, the Kevin Campbell Foundation, of course, was spawned from that. And as a result, there is an event taking place this Friday. And if you go to the link in today's description onto the Kevin Campbell website, you can have a look at perhaps attending the event. Other fantastic members of Kevin Campbell's era, such as Perry Groves, Paul Davis, Martin Keown, and Nigel Winterburn, will be in attendance for this. And it's an interactive discussion and quiz raising funds for the Kevin Campbell Foundation. So if you want to get all the information, you can scan the QR code on the screen. You can go to the website and you can read the information that is available to you there. So if you want to get tickets for the event, it's Friday this week, Friday 24th, 7 o'clock onwards. Is when the event's taking place. So go and check it out if you're in the London area and you happen to be there on Friday ahead of the game against Crystal Palace this weekend. I highly and thoroughly recommend that you go and check it out. Martin says, on a lighter note, re Stuart Pearce, there is a fantastic Brian Clough story, re him and Clough's wife. I'll go and check that out, Martin. Thanks for sharing. Mark says, thoughts and prayers to the Pearce family. Nothing is as gutting, of course, of the loss of a child, indeed. Thank you again for raising it. And thank you for the kind comments I can see coming into the chat box in response to that as well. Lucas says, Tom, is there any news on the return of Kai Havertz, another underappreciated player that we miss? Nothing other than we know already. I know there's been a few kind of notes about kind of hyping up a early return, but he is still a little while away. So hopefully he'll be back as soon as possible, but we don't have any updates beyond what we already have heard officially from Arteta on that topic. Runs with Cal says, damn, it's dreadful. That's my boy's age, and I cannot imagine what that feels like. Fair says, Tom, do you know something about John Jules? I've seen him in training with the team. I don't, other than the fact I was aware that he was training with the squad. So he's a former Arsenal player. He's gone through horrendous injuries. And a lot of the time when players are struggling with injuries and trying to get back to fitness and trying to find a new club, Arsenal, amongst others, will open their doors to former players, and Tyrese John Jules is one of those. But nothing about him potentially signing. That isn't something that's on the cards as far as I'm aware. Shonita says, Tom, how beautiful is it that in October we aren't discussing Martinelli as a negative? I liked how Arteta has managed his minutes and he's got his confidence back. I hope that he continues like this until the end of the season. I think he could maybe play a few more minutes, but I think you're right. He's been managed very well, and it is good that we're at this point of the season saying that he's had a good season, I think, so far. Pablo says, Tom, Chelsea broke Arsenal's defenders' record for a Premier League season. We're on course to take that back. I hope that we do it to silence those Chelsea supporters about that particular record. To be honest, mate, I'd rather that we were silencing those about the Champions League trophies that they have rather than defensive records. But I empathise with where you're coming from. Yes, Arsenal are currently on track to equal or break the 15 Premier League goals that were conceded by Chelsea during the 04-05 season. That also contained a 24 clean sheet record for Petr Cech, which David Raya is currently on course to potentially equal, maybe beat as well. So definitely one to keep an eye on. Isoa says, didn't this already do this with either Beckham? Yes, Beckham's been training with Arsenal in the past and had done when he was in his playing days. And I think his son, of course, who was in the Arsenal Academy as well, was involved in many ways too. Couple more just before we wrap things up. Of course, if you want to get my thoughts more so on the game, there are a lot of pieces over on the Football website, including the predicted 11 for today's game as well. So you can go and give all of those pieces a read also. Mark says, looking to the Premier League, we're home against Palace and Liverpool, then away to Brentford, and City is away to Villa. It seems like one or both will drop points while we win. How do you rate the possibility? I mean, it's another opportunity. Every weekend's an opportunity, Mark. You know, you can't count your chickens before they've hatched. And I'm not looking at these games and thinking, you know, we've got to win X, Y, Z. Let's just see what happens. Let's just take 8 each weekend as it comes, wait and see the result, and we can talk about it then. Carl says, are you going to be going to the pub first? Today? The pub? I might pop in, say hello to some people in the Tolly before the game. I'm going to be up in London a little bit early, seeing some friends who are over from America, of course, and some of my colleagues as well. So I might pop in just to say hello to some people before the game, but not afterwards, because an evening game is always really tough in trying to get home as well. Paolo says, to be honest, Tom, I think we're going to have a clean sweep of all the communities that we're in this season. Communities or competitions, maybe, that we're in. I hope, Pablo, that you're right. That would be utterly amazing to see, of course, as well. Arthur says the Northern Line is struggling. Make sure you give yourself enough travelling time. Good logic, good advice. Make sure you always check ahead and behind. Of course, I think there's some issues on the trains, perhaps down South Way after the game as well. So just check them and make sure everything's going to be fine. For instance, how's Magic Mike doing, Tom? I've not heard from him in a bit. I'm seeing him today, so I'll let you know tomorrow. But I mean, there's always something wrong with him, so you just have to kind of assume something's wrong with him. Always. It's probably the easiest thing to do. Just assume something's wrong. Something will be wrong. I'm sure. Ryan says, best pub to watch the game. I mean, there's loads. There's loads around North London to watch. I mean, I'd say that the obvious ones, but I often keep some of the quiet ones a little bit closer to my chest, because if I start saying the names of quiet pubs, they become a lot busier. So there's always that little part of me that's like, keep some secrets. But certainly if you want to go to the Tollington to watch a game, I watched the Liverpool-Chelsea game there after the match with Potsy. We had a great time watching Chelsea win against Liverpool. That was great. So, yeah, I mean, the Tolly's always a good place to go and watch a match. Martin says, Tom, Mark Crossley tells the story brilliantly because of his Clough impression is amazing. As I said, I'll go and check it out. Thanks for letting me know. And he says, who do you think will score today? I didn't give you my prediction, did I? I'm going for a 2-1 Arsenal win. I think Gyökeres will get a goal. I think Saka will get a goal. And I think they'll score late on, but it'll be too late in the game. Paul's giving us more travel updates. Bakerloo line and delays. Southgate tube station on Piccadilly line is closed as there's no escalators. See all this relevant information being given out to you for free by this brilliant community. Make sure you go over to the Highbury squads and check out my show with Sophie that we did last night. It was an absolute pleasure to join her. If you want to go and check out my show with FK on the Latte Firm, we did that on Sunday night as well. So, yeah, I'm like Micah Richards these days. I'm literally everywhere, it seems. So there's plenty of this ugly mug you can go and check out elsewhere if you want to hear more of my thoughts on the weekend, on the game today, and on kind of the fan base and the attitude to a lot of what's going on right now in general. We discussed a lot of that on yesterday's Highbury squad. So go and give that a catch-up after you have finished watching today's show, which is going to be any second now because we are indeed wrapping up. Thank you so much for always tuning in, for listening, for being here, for dropping a like. I just want to give a shout out to the Arsenal fan that breached the press zone at Fulham to come and say hello. If you watch my match day vlog, you'll know that there was kind of the buses that are outside and they park up just outside of the press box, or outside the press room. So I just popped outside, and there's a big cordon of where press can kind of go in and fans that stand around the other side. All of a sudden, this fan comes out through the cordon, says, Tom, I love the show, shaking my hand. And I'm looking around like, you're going to get in so much trouble. And lo and behold, security guards are like, you need to move. So I forgot to ask your name, but whoever you were, thank you for coming and saying hello. But look after yourself. Don't break the rules just to say hello. But I do appreciate it. But thank you to you all for listening. Really appreciate it. If you could drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be with you all, of course, tomorrow morning to break down the result in today's Champions League fixture against Atletico Madrid. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.